All right, ladies and gentlemen, here I am with Gabe Polsky. This is great. I like these podcasts that kind of come out of nowhere. I think I'd never heard of you a week ago, and now I'm really honored to have you on my podcast because I watched your movie last night. And I started to talk about this a little before we started recording, but yeah, I guess I don't know if your agent or your publicist or somebody reached out and told me about the movie, and I said, yeah, okay, that sounds interesting. And I think that was there some reference to Werner Herzog? Have you worked with him or studied
Yeah,
with him or something?
yeah. I worked with him a couple times, and he's been kind of a steady. Well, first we collaborated a couple times, then now I kind of just share stuff with him all the time. So yeah, we're close.
Okay, well that's cool. I think that's probably what really got my attention because he's one of my favorite people in existence. Although I think he
Yeah,
and I've often said, like, people say, well, who would you love to have on your podcast? Any living person. And Werner is one of them. Although I think we would disagree pretty vehemently about, the sort of, he has a very Hobbesian view of the universe as, cruel and unrelenting and indifferent and all that. And I have a slightly more romantic vision of life. But I admire him a lot. Anyway, the point is, I last night my wife and I were sitting down to eat something, and I said, "Hey, there's this movie I want to take a look at it. We don't have to watch the whole thing, but this guy maybe I can have him on my podcast." And she's like, "Okay, fine, let's watch it, whatever." And we put it on, and man, within 2 minutes we looked at each other and we were like, this is fucking awesome, this is so good, wow, really really unusual, I've never seen anything like it. Your subject is such a character, and the way you insert yourself into it, you're this kind of like reluctant participant in a lot of his adventures. And I just thought the whole what was the thing toward the end, you say something about or he I don't know which one of you was talking about Don Quixote and Sancho
yeah,
Panza, and it's just like, man, you really
yeah.
nailed it. It was a real pleasure to see the film.
Well, thank you. Yeah, that's what I love to hear that. And it's nice when something comes out of the blue. That's kind of how we're approaching it. We're not sort of with a major distributor, and it's just cool when a lot of times you're sort of you're fed kind of the hype machine, and then it's sort of under delivers. But I hope we do the opposite here with this thing.
That's what happened with me for sure. I
Yeah,
was giving it the benefit of the doubt. Just your connection with Werner Herzog is like, okay, he's my favorite director. Then maybe there's something here. But and your style is very different from his. Judging by this film, have you made other films? Is this your first?
yeah. No, I've made a bunch of other films. I guess I've sort of made a name for myself in the documentary space, but I've also made narrative films, and I've my other films have been the documentaries, a little bit more sports related, but also kind of human nature and a little askew, different than kind of how, let's say, other people approach sports or things like that, politics. But yeah, you got to check out my other stuff too.
Dude, I haven't even Googled you. I have to be this because also another reason this kind of happened really quickly is I'm about to leave on a road trip for a couple of weeks, and so we were like, well, we could do it tomorrow or wait till
Yeah.
mid-November, and so here we are. So I'm really coming in. I've often said my model for podcasting in some ways is like I used to hitchhike a lot when I was a kid, and it's this like get into a car with someone and like have no idea who they are or what you're going to talk about, and I really like that aspect of it. So it's
I love that. Yeah, that's
yeah,
kind of how this film is too, in a
it
strange
is.
way.
You're
A
along
big
for
big
the ride.
exactly, and kind of it's the unknown. It's the unknown and sort of not knowing where things are going to lead to, and seeing what comes to you. It's a little bit frightening though when you're, especially with a film, obviously, because you have a lot of invested in it and things like that, a lot of time and money and stuff like that. The stakes get higher than like just hitchhiking, but the theme is similar.
Yeah. All right. Now the name of the film is "The Man Who Would Change the World." Is that
It's the man who saves the
the
world with a
man who
question
saves
mark.
the world? Question
Idea.
mark. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. And what's the name of your character that you're following?
Patrick McCullum.
Patrick McCollum. So one thing that I think was very clever, and also amusing was that toward the beginning of the film when you're cutting between this guy Patrick, and it's like he was a kung fu master. He's, like he says something about like, well, the first war I stopped was in Africa, and and that woman in the background there, she's the queen of this tribe, and she made me a king, but it's only about 20,000 people, and it's just like, who is this guy?
Yeah.
And then you say something like I think you have him saying something about how Jane Goodall is a good friend of his. And at that point, I think a lot of eyes are starting to roll like, wait a minute, dude, you're full of shit. And then you cut to Jane Goodall saying Patrick is one of the most amazing people I've ever met. It's
Yeah.
really good. And it gives a sense, I feel like it creates in the viewer maybe the same sense that you were feeling when you were like,
Oh,
wait a minute,
yeah.
is this guy full of shit? And you actually hired a detective to track down some of his
Yeah, yeah. So
plans.
I mean, you're right. I mean, when I met him for the first time, and I think everyone kind of has a similar reaction because I've asked his friends, and people still kind of scratch their heads. But yeah, he's done so much. There's almost nothing you could bring up that he says, "Oh yeah, I did this, I did that. I was a witch, a race car driver, a prison chaplain to serial killers, to Charlie Manson, the Menendez brothers, like you name it." He seems to have done it or experienced it or knows how to, weld and jewelry design and build houses. And I mean, it's like the ultimate Renaissance man, but also like incredibly quirky. It also like has a lot of wisdom and a lot of spiritual knowledge too. So it's a little overwhelming meeting him. And then, obviously, if you're going to embark on such a serious project or whatever, you have to do your due diligence. And, there's so much I didn't believe. And I still scratch my head about a lot of things, but a lot of the things we're sort of checking out about him and, not just through private investigation, but, through contacts, people he knows, verifying things that he did. Because I mean, it's outrageous. It seems like he's like Forrest Gump. He's been involved in every major thing that's happened, but nobody knows his name. Kind of
Yeah.
kind of guy. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, like a Zelig character or something,
yeah,
that Woody Allen movie. Um, or actually, one
yeah.
of my favorite movies, I don't know if you've ever seen it, Little Big Man with Dustin Hoffman. You ever see that?
I haven't seen that. No,
It's a
but yeah, is it
very,
like that?
it's a strange movie. It's one of those like 1970s movies where you get the sense that everybody was high like all the
Yeah,
time, and it was kind of a party where they made a movie. Um, but yeah, Dustin Hoffman plays a white in the old west, like a kid who gets basically his parents are killed by the Indians, and then the Indians adopt him and his sister. So he's raised as an Indian, and then the cavalry comes when he's a teenager, and they rescue him, even though he didn't want to be rescued. And then he's like a scout with Buffalo Bill, or maybe it was Custer, and then he's like
yeah,
meets all these famous gunslingers. So it's that kind of thing where he's at
it
all these
is.
different moments in history. It's pretty funny.
Yeah,
Dustin Hoffman as a Cherokee or whatever is kind of or a
yeah,
Cheyenne. It's pretty unbelievable, but it's fun. Anyway,
yeah.
so Patrick uh, is an enigmatic character, I think, not only because his life has been so rich, but because he doesn't appear, from my perspective, to be driven by any kind of overriding ambition, or like he doesn't seem to care if he's famous, or he doesn't seem to care about money. At one point he says something about how he's using his $1,200 a month from Social Security to fund his travels to Ecuador and all this. What do you think? How does a guy have a life like that if he's not chasing it?
Yeah, that's a great question because I also, kind of was always looking for things that might be a little strange. Is he sort of hungry for fame, or why is he doing this? And if he has that, it must be very buried deep, because I do feel like it's strange for any of us to come in contact with a person who literally like doesn't have, it seems like, a mean bone in his body, or trying to achieve or be powerful. He's just trying to do the right thing, do something good, serve people. There's few people that have that purity. Now, he's not like an angel or a saint. Maybe he is. I'm not the one to determine that. But he in the end, I sort of realized that the guy is just trying to step into it. If people need help, he wants to be helpful. He wants to do it and step into that. So if these indigenous people come to him and say, "Look, you're in this prophecy. We need you to come and help unite the tribes. You're part of the It was hard for him initially to sort of accept that, and he didn't immediately say, "Oh yeah, yeah, yeah." But he ultimately kind of stepped into that and decided to go down there and help them. And I really think that he's, from the moment he kind of got this near death accident, he said when he was 15 years old, he got hit by a motorcycle and went into a tunnel and met God, and God said to him, "I want you to serve me." He really did kind of, it changed his life, and he doesn't live his life in fear, of what people are going to think or what's going to happen if I die or whatever. He kind of just steps into things, whereas a lot of us are, we limit ourselves. We think, well, I can't do this, I can't do that, or what are people going to think of me? He just doesn't really care, like you said, and like steps into it. And like if he doesn't know how to do something, he'll learn it kind of step by step. So he calls himself an ordinary guy, and in a lot of ways he is ordinary, but he's not ordinary in that he doesn't have that kind of fear and insecurity that most people have,
So
to start something or embark on something huge.
right, like that house he built in New
Yeah.
Mexico. That was
Yeah.
amazing when you
Yeah.
showed up there. Uh, you know, yeah, that's a really interesting take on it. That because I tend to think of people with a long list of accomplishments and famous friends and whatever, as people who are driven by ego or some kind of emptiness that they're trying to fill. But the way you frame it is really interesting. Maybe he is just a normal guy, but he's unrestricted by ego or fear or insecurity or whatever, maybe because of the near-death experience. Well, I guess it's beyond near-death. He was dead in his telling of it. And also the experience with his brother, extremely traumatic experience with his brother, a serious injury and horrible situation there. And then his parents left for 2 years, and I guess he was on his own. And he had a difficult childhood, but it doesn't seem to have left him with burdens. It seems to have left him lighter and freer without a lot of the
Yeah.
burdens that the rest of us carry.
Yeah, I mean, and then he went on after his brother was cut in half and he had to hold them together. He went, his parents had to take care of the brother. Then he went into the carnival and like essentially like lived on the carnival circuit, learned how to, learned about people there because he said he'd come into contact with thousands of people a day and would just learn to kind of really understand people, size them up, understand what their motivations are. And then it's just like one thing led to another. Then he started studying kung fu and learned kind of the philosophy of martial arts and particularly all the sort of subtle things behind that. But each of these kind of episodes, um, the one kind of more remarkable than the other, but they all kind of contributed to like kind of what you're saying to his overall remarkableness, I guess. I can't say that it's just the near death experience or this or that. I don't know, something. I think the near death experience kind of was sort of a catalyst for all these other things, but I don't know, his life, like we can all look back and say, yeah, each episode was critical for the next thing, you know what I'm saying, in hindsight. But somehow the universe is like guiding all this, and this guy and his experience. He believes that because of all the crazy things that he's experienced and done, that he's the guy. He has the right skill set to actually unite these tribes because of all the crazy things that he's done and his experiences. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah. Just to fill people in, the
Yeah.
basic narrative of the film is that Patrick's in India at this giant gathering of, I think it's the largest gathering of humans in the world, right? In the upper Ganges.
Yeah, the Kumbh Mela. It's like a
Kumbh
spiritual
Mela.
event. Right.
Right. So he's there, and I guess he's involved with the organizers or something, or he's up on a stage, and some a group of Native Americans from the Amazon are there, and they decide they're looking for. There's a prophecy that there's a guy with a round head and blue eyes who's going to unite the sort of native people to trigger a revolution in consciousness that's going to result in saving the planet, essentially.
Yeah, the Amazon and then the planet. Yeah, that the world is in a a dangerous spot with both the environment and all the things happening, and that that really it's the indigenous wisdom that's gonna save us all essentially.
Right.
First the Amazon, then everybody else, and that these prophecies have been started from hundreds of years ago.
Right.
And
Yeah,
they came
the
to
Kogi people, right? Is that the
yeah, the Kogi are one of them.
right?
Yeah, they're down there in Colombia, and then there are other elders representing tribes throughout the Amazon that
Yeah.
came to him. Came to him as a kind of a group.
Right. And so they come to him and say, "We think you're the figure that has been prophesized, and we need you to help us and all that." And he kind of resists it, but eventually accepts that he does have a role to play. And okay, if you guys need my help, I'll do it. And I mean, it's just so bizarre because most people, like, if you went to them and said, you know, I mean, hey, Gabe, we think you're the son of God. Can you help us? It's almost like Life of Brian, that movie
Yeah.
where it's like, I'm not the savior, leave me alone. It's this weird twist on ego. Like
Yeah.
people say, you're this exalted figure that's been prophesized, and he resists it. And even when he accepts it, it's very kind of like he wears it so lightly. It's bizarre. I mean, that section of
Yeah.
the film, and I mean, it's not like a normal film where you tell the ending, you ruin everything, but there is a section where there's some tension between the two of you, because
Yeah.
you're essentially trying to confirm what happened back in India. And a lot of the people who were there are just too old to remember at this point and give you details. But I thought it was interesting because he wasn't interrupting, he wasn't interfering, he was just kind of sitting there, like almost like just letting things happen as they happen. There's a very, it's not passive. He's not passive at all, but there's a real wisdom and sort of, I don't know how to phrase it. There's a wise distance that he seems to hold to toward his own narrative, his own story.
That's actually really interesting because I've never heard someone focus on that aspect of that kind of conflict towards the end of the film about him, how he didn't just sort of go and interrupt and argue, and there's sort of a holding back and the look on his face. That is interesting. He does say that he was very a little bit confused himself during that conflict and was wondering kind of what was going on. Just didn't really understand how this was coming to that,
Right.
But he in that period he does sort of lose his cool more so than anywhere else in the film. But
Yeah.
yeah, that is interesting. Since you bring it up, I mean, he does have part of the film is this guy is not only kind of has seemingly this unbelievable practical knowledge and kind of ability, but he also has a lot of spiritual depth and has a connection to the earth and sort of his own depth and philosophical, or not even a spiritual connection to the earth and everything around. He considers everything sacred, and it's just really deep person. That part of getting to know him, spending time with him, was like being with a guru. Not that I'm looking for a guru or anything, but he has a magical quality about him where he runs into people that just at the right time, and people like that, they just seem to always attract positivity and interesting things happening.
Yeah. I do actually. I have. There are a lot of parallels between your experience of making this movie and parts of my own life, which I'll get into in a second. But the last thing I wanted to say about that particular moment in the film, and I really appreciate how you handled it. You could have cut that all out, of course. I think most people would have, but you kept it in. You kept in the part where he says, "Look, Gabe, I don't really give a shit about your film. You're here making this film. I don't care one way or the other if there's a film about me and this whole situation, right? I'm just trying to do what I'm trying to do here." And there's like that's pretty direct, and you're trying to explain your perspective, and you can see he's getting pretty close to the end of his rope there. But then there's this beautiful thing where you say, "Do you want some water?" And he says, "Oh yeah, I'll have some water, thanks." And it's like, like he loves you, and there's this feeling like, okay, even when these guys are kind of at loggerheads and getting sick of each other, and like there's a conflict, there's also this kind of like you're pushing his wheelchair around. There's a father-son kind of quality to your relationship, and I felt like it really came out in that tension in the way you guys handled that. That was really nice.
Yeah, that's interesting too. I mean, I think if I'm going at that point in the film, it seemed like this whole thing was going, was sinking, was falling apart, whatever you want to call it. And I guess I just internally said to myself, well, I guess if it's going down, believe me, there's a lot of not just tension, but also like tremendous psychic pain that was happening for me, because if the whole thing was a baloney or whatever, we're not ruining it for the audience, but is how did I get involved with this? What is happening here? Is this all complete farce, or was this all meaningless, or is there still meaning in this story beyond the prophecy, which there is? I kind of had to ask myself over and over throughout the making of this film, if things in this thing aren't true, is it still a fascinating, meaningful story that has layers and takes you on a ride and helps you put a mirror to yourself and makes you ask questions. And so I guess I just was like, look, I guess if I'm going down here, I'll go down with him. Is he a bad guy? Is he, there was an acceptance to this sort of to like maybe the end of everything, together.
Right. Right. Well, then get it on film too.
Yeah,
if that's what's
exactly. It's
happening,
part of the story.
that's
Exactly.
part of the story. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and also you were like physically ill several
Yeah.
times. I don't know how by the way, how did you set up a shot where you're filming yourself vomiting off the edge of the house there?
Actually, yeah, my friend who actually shot that portion of the movie he shot it on his iPhone.
Oh, okay.
I was like, all right,
I
you
was
got to
thinking,
shoot this. This is bad.
like, I know I'm going to vomit maybe 20 seconds before, but like I could never set up, get the framing and the exposure and all that. Yeah, that was cool. By the way, were you in Palenque there when you went to Chiapas?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I thought so. I don't think you ever mentioned it explicitly. You said you got on a flight to Chiapas, Mexico, and I was like, yeah, that looks like Palenque.
Yeah.
Yeah, I vomited in Palenque years ago.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. I vomited in some of the world's most beautiful places.
What were you doing, medicine, or what were you?
I was in Palenque, my first trip outside of the U.S. That would have been 1983 probably, or 82. No, I got very sick. I pushed it too long. I was like on buses for 30 some hours, and I hadn't slept, and I got to Palenque and got a room and went in the room and was so sick. I had a plastic bag and I was puking and shitting in the same bag. That's how sick I was.
Wow.
And
wow.
I didn't come out of the room for like 3 days. And then I came out and I must have looked so pale and emaciated and sick. And there was this woman and it was one of those weird moments in life where there was this woman on this balcony and I came out. It was the first time I'd been out of the room in days. And we started chatting and like she was into me. And I have never felt so unattractive in my life, but she was into me. And then later, like a week later or something, I said, that day when we met, I'd been sick and like, what did you see in me? And she said, oh, I've always been into Johnny Rotten and you looked like him. I was like, okay, I looked like a junkie punk rock star.
That's so funny.
Yeah, Palenque. That was a long time ago. Yeah, what are we talking about? Oh, you being ill and wondering about the whole thing. So what I was going to say, that a lot of the parallels I saw when I was in graduate school, I became very good friends with one of my professors whose name was Stanley Krippner. And Stanley is a world famous parapsychologist. So he, telepathy, dreams, psychic healers, all that kind of stuff. He's written hundreds of articles and dozens of books. And Stanley took LSD with Timothy Leary. He hung out with Aldous Huxley and the Grateful Dead, and he was friends with shamans, famous shaman named Rolling Thunder, who was big in the 60s and 70s. And so Stanley's kind of like Patrick. He's like hung out with famous people of all different sorts the amazing Kreskin and the amazing Randy, and the only person I know who has a Rolodex with two people beginning with the amazing, but anyway, Stanley invited me to travel with him on trips. He would be invited to go to these conferences around the world, and I was his kind of young sidekick. I'd carry the luggage and deal with the press and kind of like protect him and make life easier for him. And a lot of what we did was visiting native people who had some kind of psychic importance. So healers and shamans and all that. And so some of the scenes in the movie really reminded me of experiences that I'd had where, we would go to Brazil and go to a place where these psychics hung out, but it's like a very kind of, it's sort of very formal in one sense, because people are coming from all over to meet the famous Dr. Krippner, and they bring him gifts, and there's this whole thing. But it's a very humble room in someone's house, who lives on a farm outside of Rio or whatever. So, and I felt that in the scene where you guys are in, I think you're in Brazil probably, and there was the one native guy who was very skeptical, and then the other guy showed up, and there was this kind of very formal and yet very, I don't know, nothing palatial about it. It's very, down to earth.
Yeah, that's exactly. I mean, you kind of hit it on the head also, like, which kind of brings up, this prophecy and it unfolding and the ceremonies and what is this supposed to look like, when important things are happening, or, it really is like life, like some of the most important things or most far out or most amazing things happen like in the weirdest little places. Or it doesn't have to be some amazing thing with thousands of people and it's formal and there's celebrities. No, it's like the best music is created in like someone's weird room. A guy's just thinking about like three notes and he comes up with, like, what about Jesus? What was it like when he was talking to people at the beginning? There's just like 5 people around and he's just talking to them about this. It looks like nothing,
Yeah.
It's weird, and a lot of it's weird and contradictory, and it just, you've been there, but it's also hard to like really verbalize this stuff, how sort of strange these rooms are, and the people, and the, on the one hand they're very spiritual, but then sometimes they, there's certain guys, they've got like a bottle of alcohol next to them, or they're like asking for money, the next moment they're asking you for, money or this, it's a little confusing. But they do have the abilities. They I don't know what you think. I don't know what your beliefs are, but this psychic abilities and telepathy and all that. I mean, I after kind of going on this journey and then going deeper, I definitely believe there's a lot of stuff there. I've seen it. I've felt it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it is. There's a famous painting. I think it's Bruegel. I forget the name of the painting, but it depicts. Who's the guy who flew too close to the sun and his wings
Is it
melted?
Icarus or something?
Icarus. Yeah. It's like the descent of Icarus or something like that. And so you see, in the background, you see Icarus falling from the sky toward the ocean. But in the foreground, it's like a guy plowing a field and a woman gathering some flowers and just like daily life happening. And the whole point of the painting, as I understand it, is that even the most extraordinary things happen in the context of ordinary life.
Yeah. And wouldn't you say that that's kind of a major tone in my movie, that there's all this sort of messy stuff going on in the background, and there's like grand things are happening, and
Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
And
yeah,
and also in Patrick's consciousness, right?
yeah,
Because he's clearly an extraordinary person, but he's living on his terms an ordinary life. He's got the knee thing happening, and he's, it's like a big deal when he goes up that hill behind the house that he hasn't up to the water tank, and you hear him like cheering for himself in the back, like, yeah, I made
yeah,
it. It's like stuff that we can all relate to. It's like Jesus farts or something. It's just like
yeah,
it's so
yeah,
feet of clay and all that. You know, and you've probably thought about this, but when I was watching the film and I was thinking about him as a character and how extraordinary his life is, and these experiences he's had, which I'm sure it's tip of the iceberg that you got
yeah,
to talk about in the film, and yet how kind of humble and down to earth he is. He reminded me a lot of a guy named Werner Herzog, right? I mean, that's
yeah,
why I really admire Herzog. It's like, oh yeah, I got, he gets shot in the Hollywood Hills, right? When he was doing that
yeah,
interview. And it's like, well, but it was a minor flesh wound. And then he goes on with the interview. He's just so deadpan and low key and seemingly, without a lot of ego for a world famous, and he just does his thing. And it's like he doesn't, like a
but he
guy
does
who,
have tremendous confidence.
oh yeah,
Werner, you know, he,
yeah,
he he really does love his own movies, and you know, he, I can't say he doesn't have an ego, but he just loves the work. He just wants to
right,
be working. I've got a funny story about Werner in this film, though. So I show him my films when they're getting close, or somewhere where I feel like I'm getting closer to final or whatever. And so this one I showed Werner, and it was in my house, and I could see that kind of during the movie it was just like really silent, and I thought, people are laughing like a lot in my screenings, they're having fun with it and whatever, and just and so I wasn't sure what was going on, and so afterwards, he was just quiet, and he said, Gabe, there'll be a lot of people that like this film, and he kind of mentioned new age people and spiritual type people. He's like, but I'm not one of them. And he said, I said, well, okay, why is that? He said, well, this guy, my dad, when I grew up, basically his dad was in World War II. He was fought with the Nazis, and he came back, and he was like, essentially would tell all these stories. He would have people over and tell them story after story around the dinner table, and the kids, Werner's brothers, were all there and listening. But basically, after the guests left, the kids were just like, Dad, what are you talking about? None of this stuff ever happened. He was telling these wild stories that he did this and that and writing this, but it was all not true, essentially. That his dad was kind of crazy. And so Werner's like, it was like too painful to watch this. I couldn't. He reminded me of my dad. I can't like. And so that was his. And so I guess in the end, it's like, I guess I wanted him to like it because, most people are going to describe this as kind of Herzogian. Most people do, because of the character, the obsession, the strangeness, you know what I'm saying? Even the indigenous stuff.
right.
But I just found that really interesting because that is a deep kind of reaction in a sense that to tell us a lot about Werner, right? That he had this dad that was kind of telling all these wild stories and was this I mean, that never happened. And Werner's always the one that's saying, what is truth? It's sort of it's not really there is no truth. It's just about ecstatic truth, the underlying essence of it. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Right.
I just
Yeah.
find it kind of strange and interesting, that reaction.
Very Freudian. There's a lot.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that explains how somebody
And
becomes a
ironic.
filmmaker. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, for sure. Did you, thinking about the sort of intimacy of these moments and these events that you were present for? I'm thinking about what I said earlier about how similar it was in some ways to my own experience traveling with Stanley and meeting shamans and psychic healers and all that. And I'm thinking how it would have been different if I'd had cameras and microphones. Did you ever feel? Were you in? Did you feel intrusive? Did you feel that your presence with the cameras and all that changed the course of events in any way?
I think we tried to not be that way, and we just tried our best. It's hard to tell how intrusive we were. I do think that we got kind of the essence of it. Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm not sure how to what to say about that. I just think we did our best to not be that intrusive, you know?
What was Patrick's motivation? Like, what was it like when you proposed going with him and like recording this process of him trying to unite the native people of the Western world?
Well, they just kind of invited me down to see, they said, "Well, do you want to come and be a part of seeing what happens here when we go down and meet with the Kogi?" And I I agreed to, and there was other people there that actually were setting up the cameras. At that point, I didn't decide I was going to direct this, but they there was no the question. Yeah, he didn't I didn't know Patrick was going to be kind of the main character in this film. I didn't really know anything. It started to emerge as we were down there with the Kogi, you know.
Mm.
And then when I said to him a little later on, I think, because I didn't even know I wanted to direct this, but things started to become clearer, and I said, I think it's emerging that you're going to be kind of a character, the main character in this story. And at that time, also, I didn't know I was going to be in the film. Really, I didn't plan on being there and doing all that, but that also emerged a little bit later too. So it was all kind of just emerging.
And when you met him, I think you said like a friend said, "Hey, I met this dude. You should meet him. He's really fascinating." Is that how it started?
Yeah, so I got a call. He's a reputable producer for Jimmy Kimmel. Called me out of the blue and was like, "Look, there's this crazy story. I don't even know how to pitch it. You see how we're having a little bit of a hard time pitching it because it's so strange." But he said, you should get on the phone with this guy Patrick and his colleague Joey, who's also in the film, and kind of hear them out. And I was just finishing another film, and I was a little bit kind of more curious and open-minded, and I just got on the phone with Patrick, and he started telling me about this, and I thought they were kind of crazy to begin with. But slowly, I kind of something inside me was like, well, you should hear it out a little bit. You should,
All right.
you know. So I just would get a little piece of information. I'd try and verify it. Then they invited me down, and I was thinking. Then I talked to some of the indigenous people that had approached him, and one thing led to another.
So Gabe, like I know I've written two books, and
Yeah.
I think of those books as like having a baby. Like there's very biological. Something starts as an idea. You conceive of an idea, and then it develops, and it's kicking and pain and all that, and then there's the delivery, which is always painful. and, I imagine doing a film is similar to that in some ways. Um, But I guess my question is, how are you different now than the guy who made that phone call? What was it? 3, 4 years ago? How long ago was it?
Yeah, yeah, like pretty much a little over 3 years. Yeah, I've, I guess I've become even more open-minded and also like mind blown by the things that we can't see. Um, there's the reality that we see, but there's a lot happening underneath this reality. There's forces and all kinds of things that we can't perceive or see, and they're happening. And to appreciate that, the magic of it, and the whether it's psychic stuff or different energies, there's things that there's so much we don't know, and it's like vast, and different states, mental states, that conscious states that we could get ourselves into, and spiritual states. I mean, it's like, since then I've done a little bit more experimenting in psychedelics too, with psychedelics and plant medicines, and that really is eye opening as well, mystically, personally, and I think the deeper I've just gone deeper,
Yeah.
with my curiosities and understanding and connection, So I can't say that this is the only reason why, but clearly I was sort of wanted to head in that direction, and it just, even my filmmaking. This is a film unlike any of the others that I've done, and I guess I've gone much deeper on a spiritual level.
Yeah. Did Have you thought about the possibility that you're part of the prophecy?
Yeah, Patrick has been saying this, and so did the indigenous people. They said, you're a very important part, you're a messenger, you're this. I didn't include a lot of that stuff because I thought it's if I do, the audience might think that I'm pretentious or being, I need to ground the audience. But yeah, I mean, as we've done a lot of these Q&As, and I guess I am. I mean, if the prophecy's true, then yes, I'm playing an important role here in delivering the message to the world,
Exactly.
I
Like
mean, what
even
can I do? I mean, if it's
as
true, yeah,
as it
you know,
ripples out,
yeah,
everybody becomes a participant.
yeah, everybody.
I mean, this podcast becomes part of the
Yes,
prophecy now.
exactly.
It's like everyone who goes to see the film becomes part of it.
Yeah,
And I remember there's a point where Patrick is trying to explain the mechanism of dramatic social change, and he says something like that. It's like you just, or maybe the narrator saying it, but there's something I was thinking like, yeah, he's the butterfly, flapping its wings
yeah,
that then ripples out, and you don't say the butterfly caused the revolution,
yeah,
but
exactly,
there's some grain of sand
exactly.
that becomes a pearl somehow. And yeah, yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, like, you could see this, and I could have easily just said, this is all. I don't believe any of this, and not made the film. I risked a lot to make this film that was very bizarre and didn't know where it was going, but some reason I did it. Now the audience, they'll see this film, and either they can sit on their ass and not do a damn thing, or they can be a part of the prophecy, an important part. You don't know.
Yeah. And even if they sit on their ass, they're still part of
Yeah,
the prophecy, because
exactly.
even having just experienced the film, I feel like it creates there's a change in consciousness just having tagged along with you guys for an hour and a half or whatever it is, that maybe creates a more fertile soil for the next seed that drops in it.
Yeah,
There is something that happens when you meet somebody like Patrick and watch the way the world configures itself around him. It's very interesting.
What do you think, it is kind of a hard story to like wrap your head around and sort of say in an easy sentence what it's about, you know. What do you think you were left with more than anything as just like a person, an audience? This is your podcast, so like in your head, what were you where's the meaning here
I
to
think
you? What are you left with?
well, I think
Not one thing.
yeah, I think it gets to what we were talking about earlier, the sort of the humility of the extraordinary, you
Yeah.
know? And I feel like a lot of your choices as the filmmaker were very sensitive to that. Like, I really liked the way you included his relationship with his wife, and you, sort of, you said, you asked her some question, I forget what it was. Something like she said something about this extraordinary feeling of meeting him, like he was the one. And I think you said something like, do you still think he's the one? Or I probably shouldn't ask you that in front of him. Am I getting that right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's like, "No, that's cool. You can ask her anything you want in front of me. We're honest with each other." And she's like, "Yeah, he's still the one, and I think, we've been together in previous lives and we'll be together in future lives." And there was just this real, I mean, that was beautiful. And he's sitting over there on a normal sofa, and she's, there's this beautiful moment where he's going off on something, talking to you about something, and she's in the kitchen, like, or he's doing something extraordinary. Like, maybe it's when he's on the
Yeah,
phone.
he said he just fulfilled the prophecy on a
Yeah,
phone call.
exact, because he's talking to the, like,
Yeah.
Lakota guy, and they're gonna meet with, and she's in the kitchen, and you cut to her, or you just pan to her, and she's like mending socks or something, like doing the most, like, just daily quotidian thing. And he's so excited, and she comes into the room and says, Gabe's not in San Francisco. and,
Yeah.
and he says, "Oh, sorry, I didn't realize my voice was so loud." like like that's so beautiful, that extraordinary moment with the woman in the kitchen darning the socks, and then complaining because he's getting a little too loud. I love that. I thought that
Yeah,
was
it's like,
so well
God,
done.
it's like God probably has a sense of humor too. Well, we know, you know what I'm saying, and
Yeah.
not everything has to be perfect, wrapped up in a thing, and it looks perfect. No, things are just weird and messy and funny, and they're also profound, but they're just bizarre, if
Yeah.
on a
Well,
mundane level.
and you talked about psychedelics. I mean, I psychedelics have been a very important part of my life, and I would say, if I had to distill the lesson I learned from psychedelics, it would be to see the extraordinary in the ordinary.
Yeah, yeah,
Things I would
yeah,
walk
totally,
by
totally.
most days. If I'm tripping, I stop and look, and holy shit, like, look at all the
Yeah,
colors in this rock I've
yeah,
walked by 1,000 times. Or
yeah. Or it's moving, and I don't know.
yeah, yeah.
It's yeah,
I feel like that's what it's all about, That's what makes good art as far as I'm concerned. And that's why I love Herzog's films too. Like,
yeah,
his film about Antarctica, Encounters at the End of the World. He's like, he goes down there, and it's not about the extraordinary. It's about the guy who fixes the truck, and the dude who works in the greenhouse, and the ordinary people who find themselves in this extraordinary situation. Like, that's what
yeah,
makes things really interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, and it
I
makes the
agree.
extraordinary accessible, because
Yeah,
it tells us that the ordinariness of our lives does not preclude access to the extraordinary.
yeah, and it allows you to connect deeper to what's going on. Versus, instead of it looking so amazing and special, you connect to that on a deeper level. That person or the, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like to make some sort of grand historical parallel. It's like when they started doing mass in English instead of Latin, or the printing press, or Buddhism compared to these other religions. You don't have to be in the cathedral to speak with
Yeah.
God or to hear God.
Yeah.
You don't have to
Exactly.
speak Latin. You don't have to be a monk. You can be a normal person and have access to this extraordinary energy. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
great.
I'm always fascinated by like, this idea of like, do you have to like meditate silently for 10 days to get to this state, or are there people who literally they're just regular people, they walk around and they can like access the states without
Yeah.
doing all this
Well,
thing, you know?
children, right? I mean, that
Yeah,
isn't that why
exactly.
we love like
Exactly.
children and dogs, like, right?
Yeah.
Isn't a dog like just I
Yeah.
yeah, I think animals are essentially constantly dreaming. That's
Yeah.
they are thinking, they are aware, but they're not thinking about the past and the future. They're just in the moment and what's the sensations that are coming through at the moment, which when you look at like I live in a place that's full of Buddhist retreat centers. I live in this bizarre little town in Colorado called Crestone. Have you ever heard of it?
No, but it sounds interesting.
Dude, it's bizarre. It's the only place in North America that has a permit to conduct open air cremations. So
Wow.
when someone here dies, we burn them out in the pyre, out in the desert at dawn. There's maybe 400 people in the town and another 2,000 who live in the around the town. We're at 8,000 feet under the
Wow.
Sangre de Cristo Mountains, just in the middle of nowhere. It's like an hour to the nearest red light.
Wow, that sounds awesome.
It's awesome. You should come check it out sometime. I'll
Yeah.
send you an article about it to give you a sense. But it's there are all these Buddhist retreat centers here. So people come to sit in a cabin for 3 months by themselves or do a 10-day vipassana thing or whatever. And yeah, I mean, I feel like what all these people are looking for, the be here now energy, is essentially energy without higher consciousness. It's just basic awareness.
Yeah.
It's what we yearn for.
Deconditioning the mind, the thoughts, the conditioning, the patterns, trying to eliminate all that and just without your identity too that we've built for ourselves, and just what
Right.
is it when you're seeing so clearly and so without any conditioning.
Yeah, without pretense,
Yeah.
right? Which circles us back to Patrick, as, you described him as a bit of a guru. Like, there are all these gurus here in Crestone. I meet them. I go out for a walk. I walk by. Have you ever heard of Pema Chodron? She's
Yeah, I
a
have heard. Yeah.
she lives just down this road here. We walk past her most afternoons when we go out for a walk. Um, you
We
know,
got to screen the movie for your community then.
dude, that would be awesome.
Yeah. Yeah,
They
that
they
would
would
be.
they would be into it for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, you should come out here, do a screening. That would be fun. That would be
I'd
really
love to. Yeah.
uh cool. Listen, Gabe, I'm really happy to meet you, and I'm really very thankful for the movie, and I hope everybody sees it.
Thank you so much, Chris. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Again, the movie's title is
The Man Who Saves the World. Or I should
question
say it
mark.
different. The Man Who Saves the World?
The
Question mark.
man who saves the world? The man who saves the world? How do we say it? Cool, and it's playing in theaters now around a major city. Look for it, and it'll be streaming in a few months.